Hey, good morning, everyone. I'll be your facilitator this morning. My name is Lavinia Gripentrog, and like Esperanza mentioned, I'm a transition specialist at our State Board of Education in the special education section.
Lavinia, I wonder if maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the new tool available to plan for transition.
Absolutely, I would love to. So on the topic of self-determination, self-advocacy, we know how incredibly important this is in part of the transition process. So when I say that, we say in transition, it's never too early to kind of start working on transition because these years go by so quickly. So transition is defined as starting at age 14 in Utah, but you can certainly start earlier, and self-determination and self-advocacy is such an important part of that. And all the research really points to the more self-determined and the more involved a student is in their own future planning, including their IEP, their individualized education program, the better their outcomes are. So we have developed, when I say we, us at the State Board of Education and the special ed section have developed an app, and it's a transition planning app, and it is designed for students and families to use to prepare for a student's transition IEP plan. Like I mentioned, transition IEP start at age 14. They can start earlier if an IEP team determines that it's appropriate for a student to start a transition plan prior to 14. But the app essentially helps students and families, one, understand the importance of transition planning and sort of all the evidence-based practices we know are involved in transition. Transition oftentimes is confusing and it's a bit of a mystery. And so we have embedded lots of really great information on how to have a successful transition IEP meeting into the app. Then the app asks the student a series of questions, things that they're interested in, career interest areas. It asks them questions about what subjects they like, what their goals are for the future, and maybe what some skills and activities that they still need to work on or experience to really help strengthen their transition to meeting those post-secondary goals. There are a couple different ways that you can connect to the app. It is available on our website at our Utah State Board of Education website. And I believe I have also recorded kind of an introduction video for the Utah Parent Center, and I'm not sure if it is actually on the Parent Center website, but we can certainly link it there. So I did an overview, I think, for about 20 minutes that kind of walks you through the process, how to use the app, how you can help your student use it, how families can use it, and also how educators can get involved as well, or other stakeholders if you're working with outside agencies. Really anyone can help a student and or family with the app or initiate using the app in the transition planning process when they're getting ready for an IEP. So some questions here. What is the app called again? It is called Transition Elevated Planning App. Yes, and it looks like somebody already put the URL in there. At the present moment, you can get to the app on transitionelevated.org, and very soon there will be downloads from the App Store and from the Google Play Store so that you can then find it in those app stores and download it directly onto a device. So for example, an iPhone or an iPad. But right now you would have to open up a browser and go to the URL transitionelevated.org. And you'll see three buttons when you initially get there, right? And the first one is just some general instructions. We've tried to keep the interface very simple and user-friendly by design. The frequently asked questions is a great place to start. There's lots of questions about the transition process there. And then the middle button there that says start a transition plan. That's where the student and or family member or whoever the person is that's supporting the student can go in there and start to kind of walk the student through the process. There's no password or any kind of personal identifiable information captured on this platform. So in other words, when a student starts a plan, it can't be saved. They have to kind of go through it. And it takes maybe about 10 minutes. If it's their first time, they may want to do it several times, and that's absolutely okay. They could practice with it, for example, they could do it over again before the IEP meeting. And then when the student has completed all of the questions in the platform, then it automatically generates a draft transition plan and in a PDF. And then that can be either printed or emailed, attached to an email and shared with family members, with IEP teams, with case managers, whoever is part of that student support system and IEP team. The draft plan can then be shared. It can also be, you could take that draft plan, for example, and copy and paste parts of it onto a PowerPoint. A lot of students really like to present and sort of drive their own IEPs. By using a PowerPoint, for example, or a Google Slides or something that's kind of more fun. That way a student could also embed pictures of themselves doing activities or pictures of things that they hope to accomplish, dreams that they have, maybe even videos of things that they're working on. They could embed into a PowerPoint, but they could use that draft plan, the pieces of that, and put those onto onto that template. I also have a Padlet. A Padlet is essentially just kind of a platform, a place to organize some support documents to help implement the transition app platform. So when I say that, there are some documents on there. For example, there's a paper version of all the questions that you will find in the app. That might be a good place to start with students, is to kind of look at what the questions there are going to be asked in the app, and then teach some of that vocabulary. We find that oftentimes students don't really understand kind of all the words and the concepts that go into transition. So before just jumping into the app, I will share with you the Padlet, where some kind of preparation documents are in there to help a student kind of understand the transition process before they just jump in, and be more familiar, I think, with some of the vocabulary around it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. In the meantime, that's no problem. I'm going to put in this Padlet, and Padlet is essentially, if you're not familiar with it, it's just a really user-friendly little platform, almost like a little mini website, where you will find a couple of things. You'll find the recorded webinar that I have done in the past, explaining and sort of walking you through the app. And then those support documents that I mentioned are also on there. So let me stick those in the chat. And then if we still have time, I am actually happy to share my screen and bring up that Padlet to show you. But
Lavinia.
yeah.
Is it enabled for you yet?
Oh, let's see. Give me 1 second. Yes. Okay. Move my chat over, so hopefully you can all see my screen. Does it look big enough?
We see it. It's big. Thank you.
Okay, great. So if you click on that link I just put in the chat, this is essentially the Padlet I was talking about. And the idea is that you would kind of go from left to right on this Padlet. So this is an introduction right here on just what the app is. If you click on this, it will go straight to the app itself, the URL. And then we also have a recorded webinar on this bottom one right here. So it's a recorded webinar from the Transition Institute. And this one is kind of, it's me doing an intro. But then after that, what's really neat about this is there are several teachers in one of our school districts that have implemented the app, and they show how they've used it with students. And what I really love about this is they showed how the app can be used with a variety of students. So for example, um, they have used it with students with more significant disabilities, with some physical disabilities, with limited verbal abilities. And so some teachers have been very creative and how they've had students use that to again, essentially lead their own IEPs. Then there's another example of a teacher using this online. And since in the current situation we're in right now, many students are receiving their special ed services online. And so this teacher actually has some video showing how they help the student walk through the transition app on an online platform, essentially on a Zoom. So if you have time, take a look at that. It's about an hour long, this recorded webinar right here. But I think it will really give you an idea of how this can be adapted to, I think, students of all different abilities. And how teachers have been really kind of creative in using it. So that's great. Right here on the top, I don't know if you, hopefully you can see my pointer here. There are transition app introduction PowerPoint slides. So essentially they're just some slides that I've used to kind of give you a brief overview of what the app is all about. Then this right here is the FAQ document, the frequently asked questions document, and you'll find that in the platform itself. But we also put it on the Padlet. And this is a really great place to start, I would say, if you are just new to transition in general. Again, if you're, parent supporting your own child or someone else that's supporting a student with a disability and maybe aren't very familiar with transition and kind of all the things that come with transition that are important to successful transition, this is a great place to start. We have also embedded links for outside agencies throughout the state. So for example, Office of Rehabilitation, so vocational rehabilitation is embedded in there. A link to DSPD, Division of Services for People with Disabilities, is also linked in there. Pre-employment transition service providers. So and some of this language may be unfamiliar to you if you have a younger child, but this I think will really kind of help you navigate some of those outside agencies and processes that we go through for effective transition for students. So that's the frequently asked questions document, and that is right here. And then here is just a one-page document called Utah's Transition Planning App Tips. So this kind of just gives you some tips for classroom use, suggestions for how families can use this, and then just some more tips on how to have a successful transition meeting. Now, you may find if you're a parent that is, diving in and using this and exploring this, you will probably find that the case manager teacher, your child's teacher, may not know about this. This is still relatively new, and we have been trying to get this out through our, special ed directors networks and our transition specialists and teachers, but we understand that it takes a bit of time to get to that teacher level. So that's okay. This is certainly something that anyone can initiate. It doesn't have to be initiated by a teacher, but don't be surprised if your teacher hasn't heard of this. We are working hard to get the word out. Let's see. I just want to see if there are any questions in the chat. So I'm going to pause for a minute. Yeah, somebody mentioned that they love that it's inclusive of individuals with more significant disabilities. Yeah, I think the challenge, obviously was to try to design a tool that all students can use. And we recognize that there is such a broad spectrum of students with abilities. And so it does take a little bit of creativity, but again, the intent was that it was going to be able to be used for all students. So great. Here's that paper version that I mentioned. I'm going to click on that. So it's a good place to start, I think, to anticipate what the questions are going to be when the student and or family member helps the student go through the app. So that way you can see exactly what's in there. Paper version might be a good place to start so that you can really highlight and pull out some of those concepts that are unfamiliar and start to have some conversations around them, talk about the vocabulary, kind of figure out what some of these words are, because I think it's just going to be a lot more useful if the student has a little more information and understanding of the vocabulary and the concepts that are in there to help them successfully prepare for their transition IEP if they understand some of these concepts first. And same with families, that, you know, if it's new to the family, this is a great place to start, is that paper version right here. And we also recommend that educators start there as well. When I mentioned the draft plan, I'm going to show you that first. So here we go. So this is essentially a sample draft plan. So once the student has gone through all the questions, and at the very end, it will automatically produce this draft plan. And this plan will really kind of, it aligns very well with the actual transition plan on the student's IEP. So that's sort of the idea, is that, you know, the teacher case manager is writing the IEP with the team, and this really aligns all those components that you'll find on your student's transition plan on the IEP. So that's what's really neat about this. And again, the first part is really all about the students. So it highlights their interests and their preferences and things that they like. And then it goes into what their post-secondary goals are. What do they want to do after high school? Again, they can copy and paste this into a PowerPoint slide, or they can just leave it like this and read from it, maybe on their own or with some assistance. They can share this with the team prior to the IEP meeting, so that everybody really hears the student's voice, and the student is really driving, right, their IEP, and it comes from a place of, you know, their desires, their dreams, their interests, their strengths, and also their transition needs, because they can identify what accommodations they think they might need in high school and beyond. They might identify what kinds of experiences they'd like to have to help strengthen, you know, their skill set before they go into the workplace. For example, maybe they want to have an internship opportunity. Maybe they want to learn how to write resumes, or explore, you know, different careers, those kinds of things. So that's what this does. What I also love about the
Lavinia.
oh, you guys are ready. Okay, I see it
Lavinia.
now.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that our panelists are all here.
Yay. Okay, then I won't take up any more time, but
Thank you.
I hope you take the opportunity to dive into this and check it out and use it. So I will turn the time over.